Hi, my name is Teresa Tarver.
And I am Isaac Tarver.
And this is the Better Together podcast,
where we, with our life
and all of our experiences, show you why two is definitely better than one. Hi guys, we are so glad that you joined us. This is episode 2 of the Better Together podcast. I am Teresa Tarver, and I'm here with my illustrious husband, Isaac Tarver.
Yo, what's going on, people?
So we just want to do a few housekeeping things before we get into today's topic. We want you guys to give us a 5-star rating. We want you guys to comment and interact with us and let us know if you're feeling the podcast. Let us know that you guys love us. You guys can send all questions, all advice for topics to discuss to the Better Together podcast at gmail.com. That is the Better Together podcast at gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you guys. So Isaac is going to introduce today's topic.
So today we figured that y'all don't know us. So we figured what better way to introduce you guys to us than by telling you our marriage story, right? How we got together, how we met, things of that nature, what led us to getting married. And I am going to answer the big question that every man has, which is, how did you know? How did you know that she was the one? How did you know that, what made you decide out of all the women in the world, she'll belong to you, right? So that's what this podcast is about. So I'm going to have my wife kind of, open up and tell you some things about herself. Wife?
I am Teresa Tarver. I'm 30 years old. We have 3 children, 3 boys, ages 4, 1, and 8 months.
And their names
are the Tarverlings. No, Issachar, Uriah, and Levi, but they affectionately go by the Tarverlings. What else? We live in Chicago, Illinois. It is currently snowing here, and we need to get to some warm weather.
I am Isaac Tarver. I am 29 years old, newly. I travel the world all of the time as a musician, singer. Yeah, that's kind of, what my world encompasses. Traveling the road, ministry, and coming home to my amazing family and doing everything that I have to do here. So I'm kind of juggling 2 worlds.
I forgot my occupation. I am a stay-at-home author, mother, housemaker, hairstylist, and phenomenal woman.
And I believe that I pay her handsomely for all of those things. So, the marriage story. Your perspective or mine?
Well, let me give you the right perspective so we could go with me.
Sure.
Okay, so this is the year 2013.
Let's go back to when she was jocking me before we got married.
Not even. Okay, so okay. I knew Isaac maybe like 10 years before we even like came together. I was best friends with his brother. Our families knew each other. We went to the same church. So for about 9 to 10 years, Isaac was just the annoying little brother that tried to follow us around everywhere. And that's kind of what the, depth of our relationship was. He was just around all the time. And, I never looked at him in, I guess, not desirable. Like, I didn't want to be in relationship with you outside of being the little brother. And that's what you are. Until. So, this is 2013.
She's lying.
I'm not lying. So, this is 2013. The current situation. So, this is kind of the climate of our life. I am betrothed to a young man, and we are scheduled to get together later in the year. This is March of 2013, and Isaac was fresh off of a, broken engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I sang on the praise team at his dad's church, and we had rehearsal at their house. We were always at the house, but the praise team came to the house this particular day because the church was being worked on. And so I'm dealing with yielding my will completely to the Lord. I'm like, I'm going to be with this young man because this is who I choose to be with. I had been with him for 6 years. I felt entitled, I'm like, well, I saved myself for marriage. So that's fun fact. I'm like, I'm saving myself. I haven't had sex, so I should be able to choose who I want to be with. Just real, naive and controlling at the time about
Arrogant. Just arrogant.
about what I wanted to do. So in walks Isaac, and my world kind of changed from that day. I didn't see him in any kind of way. So then he walks in, and then all of a sudden the eyes of my understanding are enlightened, and he walks in a full grown man. He came in from college, so he was at ASU, Alabama State University at the time, and he was surprising his parents. So we're in the middle of praise team rehearsal in the living room, and in walks Isaac, and he is not the little brother no more.
I was fine than a mug, you hear me? Looking good. She was feeling you, boy. And I knew it when I walked through the door. I'm like, oh, shorty peeping me. You know what I'm saying?
That's not even how it went, though. So he walked in, and I felt like, the Holy Spirit was like, look at Isaac. And so I looked at him like, okay, yeah, that's Isaac. I'm about to be with dude, though. So what does that mean? So then I looked at him again, and he had like this halo over his head, and he was just fine, and grown, and a man. I'm like, okay, but what about dude, though? Like, and I literally told the Lord, like, if you want anything to become of this, if you want me to even consider Isaac, you're going to have to take him from me. And boy, did he.
So, about a few days later, we were all, hanging out, kicking it, shooting the breeze, if you will.
Wait, no, go back to that day. We at your parents' house in the kitchen. This is that day. Where were you? What's your mindset? You're home from college. You're surprising your parents. You got hella chicks on your line.
I wasn't stunned,
two girls in Chicago. You got one girl in Alabama. Come on, tell the people the story.
All right, so I had a little situation going on.
Fresh off engagement, just out here in these streets.
I had been engaged to a young lady who I was dating the past 6 years. But at that point, the engagement had broken off. I realized that it just was not the proper way for me to go for my life. So I was wilding out, I did have 2 situations here in Chicago, though I was in Alabama. Another situation I was considering more heavily in Alabama because I figured that I would be there a while, why not pursue this situation? And, came home, spent some time, and, we were there in the kitchen. And she referred to the kitchen. I, was like, hey, we were pretty much catching up. I'm like, what's up with old boy? She's like, this, that, and third is going on. We're waiting on this. We're supposed to get married. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm telling her about the situation that I have in Alabama. And, thought that was the way that I was going. So fast forward to, I want to say maybe 2 or so days later.
Yeah, 2 days
we were all hanging out with my cousin, my brother, her sister, her twin.
I have a twin, guys. Teresa, hey girl.
And no, my best friend was there as well, and her man was there. Old boy was there, right? So we're all on the way where we were going to hang out, and she was in a separate car from me. I was in a car with my cousin and best friend, and I sent her a text. I sent Teresa a text, and I said, hey, you know that I'm your man, right? I'm who you're supposed to be with is what I was, And she texted me back, boy, I think it was like stop playing or something like that.
I said, yeah, okay.
She said, yeah, okay. Those were the exact words. For me, yeah, okay was all the room that I needed. Why? If she was not even considering it, then her sentiments would have been more, and this is just me knowing her over the years, her sentiments would have been more, declining, stop playing with me, get off my phone type
Valley
stuff,
boy.
something like that. The fact that she said yeah and okay, it wasn't, to me, it wasn't like, yeah, okay. It was like, yeah, okay.
No,
She understood.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I knew that I knew what she was saying, but I'm saying for me, because I knew where I was as a man. When set in your heart to pursue something or pursue someone, those of us who alpha male it, if you will, all I need is a little room. So when she was just like, yeah, okay, I'm like, I'm on it.
I
It's
got a
time to
question.
pounce.
So this is I never asked you this question.
Okay.
So I felt like, at this moment I had this big reveal, like, oh, Isaac's a man now, and I was kind of, I saw you.
Mm-hmm.
When you came in the house that day. What made you send me that text message? Like, I felt like the Lord had given me a revelation of this man that you were. Like, what made you send that message?
Honestly, I sent the text because I was...
Like, with everything else that you had going on, like, what made you even entertain that?
I honestly sent the text being initially, it was a joke, to be honest. I'll be very honest. Initially, it was a joke. Now, I'm not going to act like I've never, over the years had eyes for you or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest about that. But, when I sent the text, it was like, it wasn't really with the I'm on that type vibe. Mm-hmm. I sent the text, just being funny. Like I will say her guy, dude was he was always a bum to me. Okay. So, it was always like, okay, so when is she ever going to be done with this guy? She probably should never marry him. He's whack. But, my thing was, I would just send in the text, and when she opened the door, if you will, even though it was like a crack in the door, it was enough for me to put a whole foot in. So,
we went out that night.
Okay. Out that night, hung out, and I just kept texting. At that point, it was like, okay, this is a conversation, and she's entertaining the conversation. Let's see where we can go. So I kept texting. Throughout the night, she was, hanging out with old boys still. But, I would just send a little text, a little stuff, a little flirty stuff. Now, this is...
But I did not respond to any of the texts that you sent me in a flirtatious, nothing kind of way. Because I was still on dude. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, when the switch over happened. So we hung out that night. You was sending me texts. I'm sitting up here deleting the messages, like, because I was booed up with dude. Like,
you was texting back.
I responded, but I didn't, I guess, respond, like, to your advances that day. So,
hold on. I do want to say this, though.
Okay.
So, from a guy code perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I was dead wrong. I'll be honest about that. I was dead wrong. Only because, man code says you see somebody with a lady, you don't be on that for real. That's bogus, right? Mm-hmm.
But you was in a bogus season of life.
I was. I'm not even gonna lie. I was out here. So, I was real, don't bring your lady to the club if you don't want her to get took type thing. So, it kind of just happened that way.
And so we all went back to my house afterwards, to kind of hang out some more. And my guy, like, pulls me to the side and is like, I see what's going on between you and Isaac. Now, mind you, this night, we didn't even sit next to each other. When I tell you I was booed up, I was
way
booed
away
up.
From each other.
So he's over there with his cousins. We went to the same place to hang out, but as far as interacting with each other, as far as, like, talking to each other, we didn't really engage each other that night.
As a man, when what you're after is pulling away. Emotionally, you were pulling away.
Okay.
He understood that. Any man can tell that. Especially after, the amount of years of relationship that y'all had. It didn't take much.
So you saying he understood that something else had my attention?
Absolutely.
Okay. So he's like, I'm leaving you. I see what's going on between you and dude. And after he left my house that night, he did not come back. Now this is is bizarre because this is 6 years of, relationship. We never had went 24 hours without speaking to each other at this point. And he left my house and did not come back. And when he came back, I was engaged.
Yeah. So, what led to engagement?
Wait, no, we gotta finish telling the night. So that night, you went home, everything was cool. The next night, you went to visit your little boo thing that you had in the South Highlands.
Oh, yeah, you gotta
So
talk
then
about all
after
that.
that, no, I'm progressing the story just to show that it was not like after that night, dude left, we got together. That's not what it was.
That's true. That's true.
So you were still, pursuing other situations that you had here. And I was just like, well, I'm by myself. Like if he's gone, then he's gone. So I was by myself.
I don't even think she realized he was gone. I think it was like he probably was just. She thought he was gonna come back at some point. He just never did. So, as the week went on, we started to hang out a little bit more. And it wasn't a thing we were hanging out exclusively or anything of that nature. It was always with her twin, my brother, actually her twin's boyfriend at the time. We all hang out. We actually went to the studio and hung out or whatever like that. And that was the night I think the both of us started to really see that something was happening. So we went to the studio just randomly. It wasn't like, hey, let's go to the studio and cut anything specific, or hey, I want to do this specific song or whatever. We just went to the studio and just put on some music, right? And she and I went into the booth and we were kind of just vibing. And if you know anything about music, music has a way of, talking, or music has a way of expressing a moment. And it just there was this synergy between the two of us that night that I felt like kind of was the thing that's like, hey, there's something here. Like, you probably should see what this is, really about. So I think that was the night that we kind of started to realize and started to kind of be honest about where we were with things.
Yeah.
So we hung out, the rest of that break. I was actually home for a spring break, so it was only about a week. One of the things that happened to me, I was also in that same space where I'm like, I was in the, kind of do my thing space, but I was also in having this conversation spiritually, like, what would really happen if I was to, fully submit to, doing this Christianity thing the way that God, wants me to do it. And, I prayed and I was like, Lord, show me something that, says that doing it your way is the way. So I got a car randomly. I had been trying to get a car for a long time, I was having issues or whatever it may be. And I got a car. It was like the easiest process that I had ever experienced. And this was probably like a night or so after, praying that prayer. And so now, at that point, I'm like, oh man, I'm all for it. I'm gung ho. So that Sunday morning, and this is like funny. Well, I guess it's apropos. That Sunday morning, which was Easter Sunday, we get to church. Well, I get to church, and it seems like my whole world like converges all in one spot. So all of these, all of my situations, if you will, for whatever reason, came to church. All of them, So I'm like, what is going on? Like, so after church, I'm going to my car, and one of the young ladies that I had been involved with, she's sitting in my car with my siblings. I'm like, what? Another young lady who, at the time people didn't know, I had, been in a sexual relationship with, she's sitting in my car. It's just really weird. But for me, at this point, my eyes were kind of fixed on Teresa. And I'm like, yo, So Teresa, like, hey, what's the plans? We were all going back to my parents' house for dinner, for like an Easter Sunday dinner type thing or whatever. So Teresa's like, I'm like, you gonna ride with me? She's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. So we're going to the car, and the young lady was sitting in the front. So I get in the car, and I'm like, hey, you got to get in the back. And so she's looking at me crazy because as far as much as she knows, she and I are a thing. Like, we got something going on. So why do I have to get in the back, especially for another girl? So she gets in the back. Teresa gets in. We all drove to my parents' house, and I immediately was like, hey, Teresa, I'll be right back. I took the other girl to her house. I'm like, you can't stay here. So I took her home. I told her, hey, listen, I know that, we've had something going on or whatever, but today is the end of it. And I'll call you, maybe later we can talk about, why that is, if you need closure. But, that's that. So I dropped that young lady off, came back to the house, and was hanging out with Teresa. So, we spent that day. Randomly, one of the, prophets at my dad's church came up to us and was like, hey, y'all know y'all gonna get married, right? And I'm like,
what?
So it was kind of like sideways, random, or whatever like that. But we was like, oh, okay, cool. If that's the case, then let it be the case. No big deal.
I was not thinking about marriage because once dude left, I'm like, this is the last 6 years of my life that can just be done in an instant. I'm focusing on me 100%. I'm off, everything that I was thinking. I just was not in that mindset no more. I think I was traumatized by how quick that had happened, and it was just like, I'm done. So that's kind of where I was. So when she said that, it kind of took me like, girl, bye.
Right. So I had to go back to school. Went back to school, and
Oh wait, you didn't tell a good thing about. So this was what break was this?
Spring break.
Easter break.
Yeah.
And so he was about to leave. Remember what happened the night before you left?
Enlighten me.
The night before you left, we was all in my mama's house. We was all in the basement. Me, you, Jaleesa, everybody. We was like playing games or something. And so this is the Sparks night. This is the
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So we had been hanging out or whatever, and I think you asked me, right?
Yeah, I did.
It was like, what? What would you think if I kissed you? And I'm just thinking like, I was feeling him at this point. Like I'm feeling him as he's here, but he's about to go. Type, not about to be in a relationship or nothing further than this type thing. But I was just, in a space was like, okay. And so, and this was kind of significant because at this point, I've only kissed like a handful of people. Like, I just wasn't the person that was, kiss people. So he asked me, and I'm like, yeah, you can kiss me or whatever. Just thinking like, okay, it's going to be a kiss. I've kissed people before. It's a kiss. But when we kissed, it was just like a lot of chemistry there.
Yeah.
And that for me was like, because I don't know. I didn't think that it was going to be that. I knew I was kind of feeling him, but I didn't realize that, I didn't realize it was at that point.
It was special. It was. If you're, Disney Channel, it was, the little leg pop thing. It was.
Yeah. And it wasn't like a passionate kiss or nothing. It was a peck. It was truly an innocent peck, but there was so much
lights and cameras and actions.
Fireworks. So that was that. And so he went home the next day.
So, yeah, got on the road, went back to school. Fast forward, we were, I was back at school or whatever like that. And at school, like literally between every class, every, down moment that I had, I spent talking to Teresa. Texting, calling, stuff like that. Like every moment was us spending all of our time together. So, we pretty much it really, really, really was becoming a thing for us. Like, we had to be talking to each other. And I think the thing for me was the difference, because you text people, you talk to people. I think the difference from what a conversation with Teresa was like than it was with any other, relationship that I had prior. In most of my other relationships, I was always, head and shoulders, waist, knee, ankle, probably above the other person as it pertains to understanding of God, spiritual things,
Biblical
scripture,
text,
you know,
theology.
things of
Yeah.
that nature. So when when I was exploring with Teresa, being in a space where we could share understandings or be, eye level, or be able to talk about the things of God, and she understood what I was talking about without me having to go all the way back to Adam and walk her up. That was special for me. That was special. It kind of it really added to um, what it was that we were developing. So though I was in school in Montgomery, I was leading worship for a church that was in Mobile, Alabama. So that's about 2.5, 3 hours away. And I was up in Mobile one weekend preparing for my Sunday morning, and she and I were talking, and I realized that what, this is the person that I really want to be with. So I called all of the other little situations that I had, because I did still have situations. I got to be honest. I called all of those other situations and pretty much let them know, like, hey, you know, what we thought it was going to be, it's not going to be that. I've, come to the realization of where I need to be and who I need to be with. And I hit Teresa up and pretty much was like, hey, I want to be with you. Let's be together. Let's make it a thing. And this was April 12th of 2015.
13. You keep
13.
going to 15 when
I
the
keep
baby
saying
was
15.
born.
15. That's a significant year.
It
13.
It was your first son, so 13. This is 13. And so I think God had already started to deal with me about like what relationship would be. But I was just kind of like in the space like, okay, if something happens, it'll happen. Like, I'm not going to pursue this. I'm not going to force it. Like, it would have to come to me. Because I felt like I was in a place before where I was making things happen and, just being really hands-on and involved. And that's why it didn't work out. And I think that I was just in a space like, he has all of these other situations because he was very honest about where he was and what he was doing. I'm like you showing me a purpose with Isaac when Isaac got other stuff he doing. So if this is supposed to be something, you got to let him know and let him bring it to me. Like, I'm not going to say, hey, the Lord showed me that all of these great things that we're supposed to accomplish together. Like, no. I'm like, if this is going to be something, it's going to be because he makes a decision to make it something. So that's kind of where I was. So I get the phone call and he's like, I know that I've been in a space, I know what I was involved in. I have called everybody that I was involved with and told them that I am no longer, going to be pursuing them or having the kind of interaction that we've had or any interaction at all. And I want to pursue you. I want us to be a thing. And he shared with me the things that I had already been privy to. So we decided to enter into a courtship on April 12th, 2013.
Yeah. So we hung out, kind of, fast forward, kind of speed things up. We hung out that summer. And while hanging out that summer, things, were.
Oh wait, you jumped. So we was together for a month. That was April. So May, I came to visit you.
Yeah, so she came down to. I was getting to that. I wasn't gonna get past that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Babe.
So she came down to Montgomery, and we went to Panama City Beach, Florida, and hung out for a week, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And then we went home back to Chicago. Originally, I was supposed to stay in Mobile, but decided I would go home and surprise my family. So we drove from Panama to Chicago. And actually, I take it back. We drove from Augusta to Chicago, right? Because I left Panama. We went in Panama maybe 3 days. We drove from there to Augusta, Georgia, for a worship conference that I had to do there, and did the conference. And then we drove back to Chicago, and got home, and we pretty much spent that summer together. And what we thought would have been, time, preparing and things of that nature. We were together, and for me, on April 12th, when I told her that I wanted her to be, my girlfriend, when I wanted to be exclusive, I knew for a fact that I would marry her. Then it wasn't a question anymore. It wasn't a question of who I would be with. The All of the writing was on the tablet, if you will. And I knew for a fact that she was the one who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. So to answer the question of how do you know, the truth of the matter is when you know, you know. Like when you come to that space of maturity in your life where it's like, okay, cool, I am actually deciding that um, though I know there are options, though I know that there are thousands, millions of women that I could try to build something with, this is the woman that I want to be with. When you know, you know. And it's a mature decision because, like I said, the options are there. But that was then. That was April 12th. I knew then, like I said, we spent that summer together, believing that we would have about a year or so to, you know, plan things. I did talk to her about marriage just to kind of see where her head was, what she thought about it. And I don't think it was hard for either of us seeing as though we had both come off of these engagement seasons. So we, had that summer going and thought, like I said, that we were going to be able to, prepare a year or so out.
Maybe be getting
And
engaged within a year
yeah,
and a half.
But as it happened, things progressed really, really fast.
Extremely fast.
So we,
this is July.
Yes.
So we would do this thing where we would like go to Lake Michigan through the summer and just pray, So we would get up early in the morning, like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and just go on the water and pray. Like I'm a very, I love the water. And so we went to the water to pray, and this was unlike any other day, that we would go on the water and pray. We pray individually. And so we went, we prayed, and when on the water, I heard, August 17th. And I'm thinking like, oh, okay, this is July. So maybe, you're saying, God, that we're to be married August 17th of next year or the year after that. That's just the date. And then the Lord said, no, August 17th of this year. And so I'm freaked out like, God, it's July. How could you say that? Like we haven't, that's not enough time. Maybe I'm not hearing right. I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to check with you. So we get in the car and we're driving home, and Isaac says, if I tell you something, will you think I'm crazy? And I'm like, what? I'm like, I already know. And he's like, yeah, we're getting married on August 17th of this year. And I'm like, okay.
So it was crazy. I think I was kind of freaked out, like that, she had heard the same thing that I heard. So that was the first, like I said, my relationships prior to this. So there was, that would have been impossible. But the fact that that had happened to me was like enough. And then, like I said, I was, in a place where I knew for a fact that I wanted to be with her. So I wasn't really afraid of time. So we pushed for it. We pretty much, at that point prayed and said, God, this is a short amount of time. So if it's going to happen, we need you to make it happen. And literally, that's what happened. Like everything from our venue to what we wore was paid for, taken care of by other people, our pictures, everything.
Everything was gifted.
So it was we had an intimate wedding, close family and friends were there. And immediately after we got married, we moved to Montgomery, Alabama. We had to because I was still in school. So we moved to Montgomery, and this on set our amazing but crazy first year and something of marriage in Montgomery.
Yeah. So overall it was quick. We were together for 4 months, in a relationship for 4 months before we got married. We was engaged for like 3 weeks. And And it was crazy. I think that we both had the kind of peace going into it because we know that it was the voice of the Lord that directed us. Not only, did you hear this, and then I think like when the Lord says something, He makes it happen. He supports what He endorses.
Yeah.
So that happened, and it was a crazy, wonderful, beautifully orchestrated thing. And here we are 6 years and 3 kids later.
Yeah. So as you
Doing
can
our
see,
thing.
as you can see, like just from what got us from dating to being married, like as you can see, it was a roller coaster. And but I think one of the things about like the ups and downs of life is when when you have a stabilizer, and the stabilizer for us we'll both say would be our faith and our belief in who God is. This, when you have a stabilizer,
Mm-hmm.
things can seem like they're going up and down, but for a fact like the ground under you is secure.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing that gives you solace, if you will, with the moving pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So for us it was like though this season seems like what in the world, we had enough faith to believe that like God was really orchestrating it. So yeah.
And my whole, I guess, from my perspective of how did I know you were the one, because I never answered that question. It wasn't just like our relationship. I had seen you in other seasons. I saw how you handled pressure. I saw how you handled people. I saw how you were with your family. I knew you in different spaces to be able to judge your character enough to know if you were a stable person or not. To know I trusted the God in you. I trusted your reliance on the voice of God in that space that you were in, because you really transitioned. Because at first, I mean, you heard the voice of God, but I don't think you were yielded to it. So when I saw God call you and you submitted to that space, it's like, okay, I can trust Him. Because if I marry this guy and something unfavorable happens in our marriage, I can trust that He is gonna hear God and be able to respond to Him appropriately.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the beauty that is the beginning of our relationship. And we pray that in hearing this story that you are able to see like how things can work out when you really trust God for real.
This is not a recommendation. Listen,
absolutely
4 months and getting married, I do not wish that on nobody.
I don't and
I loved it for us, but this
Yeah.
is very specific to us, to what we're called to do. I mean, because we even saw in the first year of marriage, there were things that we would do together that would really change the trajectory of our families, of our bloodline, of other people's lives, and it was just necessary for our story. We are by no means saying, get with somebody and marry them in 4 months unless you are sure, without a shadow of a doubt, with confirmation involved, that it is the Lord Jesus Christ of Nazareth that is speaking it to you.
Yeah, like that could be for people who are not prepared for that level of speed. That could be
detrimental,
totally detrimental. Yeah. So we don't advise it at all. If we were to counsel anybody and they brought us that specific situation, we probably would have. If we were counseling us, we probably would have been like, y'all tweaking, take some
and
time.
And that was even like what our marriage counselor, like because we did do marriage counseling, although it was very short. We packed it. We were very consistent, and we packed a lot of necessary conversations into that short time. We were dedicated to, outside of the relationship, just having that preparedness. So I don't recommend ever going into any marriage without marriage counseling, no matter how short the engagement and marriage period is. We got marriage counseling right up until the day before our wedding. So
yeah,
get counseling, get somebody, a third party in there that's gonna bring up those questions that you might not be considering when you are dealing with the bliss of being engaged and, your new life, somebody that is going to bring a reality check and cause you to answer or at least think about and consider some tough questions. And so you don't get married and be like, well, we didn't even talk about this. And we're going to, do that's another episode of things that you should discuss before you get married. Baby, why do you love me?
I love you because I have a clean house, and honestly, I'm gonna.
Is that like really important to you? You have been really
matters.
Just complimenting me on the house lately.
It matters. I'm gonna be. Listen, I want y'all to know, like, I'm a very, very, very honest person. Like, so anytime we do these, why do you love me? You gonna get a very, very, very honest answer. And right now, one of the reasons why I love you is because we've been having amazing sex.
I mean, you've been out of the country, so
we've been having great sex.
Okay.
So. Why do you love me, babe?
I love you because you have been very intentional about making sure. No. Sorry. You've been very intentional about making sure that I get me time. And I don't know if that's because you've been traveling so much, but like I have really been appreciating you just like assuming all responsibility and letting me kind of go and just have some time because that's necessary. But it's not something that I had to bring to you. It's kind of something that you initiated. Like, hey, take the time. So I appreciate that, and that's one of the reasons that I love you.
So, I am Isaac Tarver.
And I'm Teresa Tarver.
And this is the Better Together podcast, where we, with our life,
and all of our experiences,
show you that two is definitely better than one.